keeping the listener engaged is sometimes a tricky thing in electronic music. So today I'm going to be talking about 5 ways in which we can maintain that forward momentum and direction and keep our tracks really focused from start to finish. If you're having trouble finishing tracks, myself and the EDMProd team are going to be launching a new live cohort-based course called the Song Finishing Accelerator. We'll be personally helping you out to finish 4 tracks over the 4 weeks, and it's going to be a lot of fun too. So if you're interested, go check out the link below. So this concept of maintaining interest is what I call direction and focus. That means that your track is intentionally directional. It's intentionally moving in a particular way, and your track is actually focused the whole way through. So this is actually one of my most common pieces of feedback advice when I'm listening to intermediate producers' tracks. It's that everything is there, but sometimes in the arrangement, the track just gets a little bit lost, and it's a really easy thing to tell when I'm listening to it. As soon as the track feels a little bit lost, then that's when it gets repetitive and starts to get boring, and that's when the listener would probably just flick to the next track as well. So a good test that I ask my students is this, just get a fully completed track, and if you can click anywhere in the track, any random spot in your song, and describe the direction or the focus or the intention of that particular spot. You need to have an intention, otherwise it starts to get boring. So if I was just to click this random spot here, the direction and the intention of this spot, I'm directing you into the breakdown. So this little section here is the breakdown, all the drums come out and it's sort of just like kick and bass. And this spot here, the ambience is building up, and that's building some tension into this breakdown. And then the breakdown is moving towards this main peak, this main drop of the song. So let's have a listen to this little directionality push towards the breakdown here. Pads are building here. The pads continue building, so we can see there's a direction here. This is what I'm looking for to really grasp the listener's attention. All right, so let's just take a few steps back first, and we're going to be talking about locking into a solid groove. A solid groove is the core of where the interest and the potential comes in our track. So if we don't actually have a solid groove, then we kind of lack the potential for our track to be interesting. So if you think that groove is where you're lacking, then definitely go check out my Groove Mastery in 10 minutes video. I'll link it at the top. But I'm just going to show you one quick technique in which I think about creating grooves, and that's just taking it slow and making one change at a time and thinking about that change and the implications of that and where you can start piecing together the puzzle pieces of the groove and create this solid structure. So let's have a listen. This is just a basic house beat at the moment, right? Nothing special. I'm just going to make a 2-bar mini clip here and listen to where I could potentially place some notes. So maybe here, I'm just going to put this down a few octaves, of course. And then maybe another one over here somewhere. I'm just going to go up a little bit so you can, so it has a little bit of variation. And I'm just going to loop that across. And this is the start of creating our groove, right? And then we can slowly, one step at a time, start to complexify this a little bit more. So I might make another note over here somewhere, right? Something like this. And what I'm actually going to do is just shorten this, duplicate it, and then just bring the velocity of this second note down a bit. So we have this kind of effect here. I think that's cool so far and a nice sort of structure for us to go from. I'm now going to pull up my lately bass, and this is just a sort of classic old school bass tone, right? And so I'm just going to make a few notes here. Let's maybe put this up a little bit in velocity and then do this sort of classic sort of old school kind of rhythm. And then maybe I could ascend up here, something like this. Maybe one more note down here as well. Let's have a look at this. One more slight change that I'm going to do is just shorten these notes here to give room for the notes in here that are overlapping, that would be overlapping otherwise. So let's have a quick listen to this. And that's kind of a nice groove that we've got there. One last thing I'm going to do is just duplicate these notes over to here. And this is just going to be duplicating these exact same notes and just adding a little bit more sub, because this lately based sample just lacks a little bit of sub, right? And that's just a nice groove to start off with. It's just something simple in which we can complexify and build upon. So locking into a nice groove at the start is a really, really important point that people often forget. That has a lot of impact to the interest and the dynamics, the directionality, and how your track flows. Because if you can lock into a nice groove at the start, you can make less changes because people just want to listen to the groove, right? So this brings us on to our second point, which is having options in the drums. So the drums in electronic music play a big role in shaping the energy and momentum and how the track is going and moving forward. So as you can see here, if I'm wanting to up the energy, I'm going to add maybe in a new hat, or if I wanted to build tension, I can start to take out things in the drums. So these things come into the other sections of your track as well, but the drums are really important to signify changes in your track. And it's often hard at the start because a lot of us don't really have much drum knowledge when we start out producing, but the drums are really important to signify the movements and changes through your track. So having enough options in your drums is really important. So this is the same track as before. I've just added a few more drum elements. Like we had before, we've got this kick, we've got this clap, and we've got this off hi-hat, which is just providing this classic house rhythm, right? And then I also have another open hi-hat which layers with that off hat, and that's going to provide me a little bit more energy when I want it. So listen to how the energy changes when I flick it on and off. So it's providing that energy lift that we might need, and it's also providing an option. So we also have other options in here for more energy if I want. I've got this hi-hat loop that's like a 16th roll. We also have this shaker 16th here as well. And I can put them in individually, or I can put them together if I want as well. If I wanted a little bit more groove, I've got this syncopation loop that has like some bongo and some closed hat and some snares in there. And they sound like this, and they just provide, like I said, just a little bit more groove. So if I want a section that's a little bit more groovier, I can do this. Right? So all of these things are options that we need to consider that are important, that we can bring in and take out, that will influence the forward momentum and the direction of our track. So having these different variations of drum elements that we can use is how we're going to build out our whole track in different stages of intensity in the drums and different stages of energy in the drums, and have different groups of things playing each time so things don't get boring. If we want to go into a breakdown, we can do that. If we need more energy, we can do that. So really just having these options is just going to make the whole arrangement stage much easier to control. So whilst you need options in your drums, you also need options in the rest of your track as well. And so understanding the difference between optional elements and necessary elements is really important. So I'm going to show you this track as an example. This is one that I've been working on. It's like a slow trance number. It's at 122 BPM. It sounds a little bit like this. So here, in order to understand which things I can take away, you need to understand which things you're relying on, these necessary elements that I was talking about. So all the structural things are going to be quite necessary. We need that structure. So I'm going to solo my kick and snare here, right? And then we also have this, the low end. We need some low end and my bass line here. And then we also need some space as well. So this thing here, I'm actually relying on as well. And this is just providing some sort of modulated space. Have a listen. So this thing. And one last thing that I'm really relying on here is the ambient. So this is just some field recordings that I have in the background. Right? Got some bird calls as well. And this just helps to provide that depth and space as well. So here I'm ticking all the boxes. I've got structure, I've got low end, and I've got some nice space as well. So everything else here is actually optional. So you can see that I don't have this main synth in here, but if I bring that in, I can bring that in or I can take it out, and it still feels like the track is full enough. So having those options in the synths that you can bring in and then take out is going to be really important for maintaining that forward momentum, because then you won't get lost and then you won't get stale. So really go through your track and try to characterize the things that are really important for the track to feel full. And then also the other things that are going to be optional that you can bring in and then take out and make some slight variations on, and then sort of change and then bring in again. So these optional elements are going to be those non-core elements of your track. So we have this synth here, which is an optional element that comes in here. And then we also build into this other synth back here as well. So you can see how I'm playing with these sort of optional elements and sort of bringing these in and then taking these out and making some variations and changing things up. But these really core ones, they're staying in the whole time, unless of course the kick here is taken out to build tension, but they're staying in the whole time because those are the things that are really setting up my track. So this is the question that I'm posing to you if you're struggling with trying to find out how your arrangement is going to move forward. If you're struggling with where your track is going, just try and dictate which ones are those core ones. And then if you don't have enough optional elements, maybe that is the key. Maybe you need to create a few more optional things that you can bring in and take out. So the next thing is thinking about the space in your track. So the space is like the environment in which your track is living in, the texture, the depth, the pads that you might have in the background, the ambience that I have in this background. So here at the start of the track, it is actually quite different. This is the same track, that sort of trancey one. And the start of this track is actually built around this one pad here. So have a listen. It's quite an ambient start to the track. And the space is really, really dictated by this pad. This pad is providing the 90% of what the listener is listening to in terms of the space. So space is something that people sometimes neglect. And if the space of your track is the exact same the whole way through, and it's a really dominant element like this, let's say this pad was playing the whole way through the track, the space would be the exact same and the track would feel really boring. Because the environment is unchanging, the actual space of your track is the problem. So have a listen to how just a change in space, just taking out this pad. I've literally done nothing else in this track in this position. I've just taken out the pad and just put this one little bongo hit here, and have a listen to how this change of space is really interesting and makes the track feel like it's progressing and moving forward. So this pad's still in here. So it's one of those things that the listener can tell something has changed, but it's hard to put your finger on exactly what has changed. That's usually a change of space. So it makes it feel interesting and different and progressing, but not much has changed. It's quite a minimalistic change. So the space and the environment of your track is really important to change around here and there. This will make the track feel fresh and different. So the last thing I'm going to talk about here is B sections. B sections is a really interesting way of changing your track without adding anything new. So what we're doing is keeping all the same elements in our track. We're not adding any new ones, but we're just changing what we have slightly so it still fits with the rest of our track, but just has a new feel to it. And then that way it feels like our track is progressing, it's changing, it's moving forward, and it has focus. In this track, this example here, I've actually created a B section, but it's just a B section in the breakdown. So you can see all the drums come out, we just have the kick, and then the bass line turns into a single note rather than having a progression. So I'm just going to quickly play it for you here. So you can see how the bass line is progressing. It's going up and it's going down. And this is the core element of our track. So this bass line is really important for the identity of what our track is. But in the breakdown here, what I've done is I've actually created more of like a trancey bass line here, where I've just stuck on the same note. It's in a similar rhythm, but it's just on the same note. It creates a bit more of a trancey feel, and this movement away from the original theme that we've generated here also creates tension and interest as well. So have a listen to how this sort of progresses through this section. And then this hat comes in here as well. So now with this B-side breakdown here, it provides enough variation and interest to go back into this sort of progressing melody here and all the drums coming in, which is pretty much the exact same section as this one. I've just made some slight variations sort of like in the sampling. And so this quick little B section here is providing a lot of focus and forward momentum in my track. So this is one way of using B sections. You can also create a B section where your song sort of slightly shifts towards the second half of the track and sort of doesn't go back to the A section. So this is another way of doing it. I will caution that you have to be careful when you're doing this, because if you change your song too much in the B section, then it will lose that focus that it had at the start of the track. So just keep this in mind, but B sections is a really, really cool technique in which you can change things without actually adding anything new. So that's it for today. I hope you've learned a few things about the concepts of directionality and focus in your track and how you can maintain that interest and that listener's attention, which is so important. If you've enjoyed the video today, remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Otherwise, thanks for hanging out, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one.